Hi everybody, thank you for joining me for this hamstring practice today. We are going to want to have a few props. Firstly, maybe yoga blocks. If you don't own yoga blocks, you may want to have books or anything that actually helps to support you. One of my students once said to me she used like a tin of beans, and I thought that was fantastic. So use what you've got at home. Play with props that you might need. You can always pause the video and try out different things at any point. We will also want to have a yoga strap or something like this. So I think what works quite well is a dressing gown tie or a scarf. It's only for the last pose, so anything roughly like this. If you're using a yoga strap, I've put a little tie at the bottom so you can keep that in if you need that. And then the last thing we're going to use are socks. So have your socks ready. We're going to use those in the warm-up. So yeah, have them. We're going to be actually wearing them. You can also use sliders if you don't want to use socks, or if you're on carpet, you might want to use a piece of paper or even lasagna sheets, but just don't put the lasagna sheets back in the packet, not when your feet have been on them. So join me in a moment on the mat and we will practice this hamstring session together. Let's just place our props off to the top of the mat or to the side of the mat. We don't need our blocks or our straps until the end of the practice, so they can go off somewhere to the side. We will, however, need our socks at some point during the beginning of the practice. So have your socks somewhere at the top of your mat or the side of your mat so that we can start practicing with those when we need them. And we'll begin our session today actually in a little child pose position. So just resting your head down onto the earth, maybe using hands or fists to support the head if you find that's quite nice. And if this feels a little bit tight for your knees, maybe just coming up into a tabletop position if that feels better, or even a puppy pose if this feels more comfortable for your body. And take a moment wherever we might be just to come to your breath. We're working into our beautiful hamstrings, our legs, and really thinking about that connection between the hamstrings and the glutes, the butt muscles. How important it actually is for us to allow strength in this area and not just flexibility. We often in yoga think of flexibility being king and strength being like second. I want you to think about stability and mobility as opposed to strength and flexibility. And particularly when we look at the hamstrings, we kind of get a little obsessed to be able to get into the splits, or we kind of really want to be super flexible. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be super flexible. But this is not that practice today. This is about developing stability in the muscles, about developing an awareness of what we might need them for and how we might be able to use them effectively in our practice that can transfer into our daily movements. So what are our hamstrings used for? They're used for sitting, so bending the knee, so bending in sitting, walking up a hill. They're also used for extending the leg backwards straight, so that's a really important awareness of when every time we walk, we extend that leg back. And they're also used to help mobilize the pelvis. So if we're very tight in the hamstrings, the pelvis can get quite stuck. So let's take another breath in our child pose position. Just feeling into the relaxation of your body before we get moving. We're going to move today. Then as we make our way all the way onto our bellies, let's crawl forward and drop onto the tummy. You might want to use your hands as a pillow. I'm just using my hands as a pillow so I don't squish the microphone, or you can turn your head to one side or let your arms go out to the sides. Just give your legs a little bit of a wiggle just to release some of the tension in the back of the body, the glutes, the lower back, and just give the legs a little bit of a funky wiggle side to side. And then coming to a little bit of a pause, let's tuck the toes and push the knees off the floor, straightening the backs of the legs and keeping the pelvis pushed down, so slight engagement of the glute muscles.
Then we'll slowly drop the knees back into the ground, keep the feet flexed. Without lifting the bum off the floor, we're going to pull the heels in towards the buttocks. So keeping that pelvis pushing down, activating the hamstrings. Just hold that position here. So closing the joint, closed chain, contraction here, the muscles. And then extending the legs away again, tucking the toes into the floor, lifting the knees, the thighs up as high as they will go and pushing back, keeping the pelvis pushed down into the floor rather than lifting the bum up. So we don't want to lift the bum up, we want to keep it nicely grounded. And then again, dropping the thighs, the knees back into the ground, keeping the feet flexed. We pull the heels in towards the buttocks, keeping that pelvis pushing down, and feel your hamstrings have to activate. Those lovely juicy hamstrings contracting here. One more time, we extend the legs back, tuck the toes, lift the thighs off the ground, keeping the hamstrings straight here. So you feel the extension through the backs of the legs, and then relax and just give the legs a little bit of a wiggle. Let the legs go. Good, hands will come underneath the shoulders. Let's push all the way back up into our tabletop position. And I want you to just move the pelvis around. So get the pelvis, tailbone up and down, maybe side to side with the hips if that feels nice. And just explore as we're moving how this will affect this area of your body, hamstrings. Remember, we've got 3 of them. We've got our bicep femoris, the one right down the middle. We've got the ones that go either side, lateral and medial. So we want to be able to move and mobilize the pelvic area to then help the spine to move, the back to feel more mobile. But what we don't want to do is be overstretched. We get yogi butt, which is when we overstretch this area, this section of the hamstrings and the buttocks connection, and that can actually cause a lot more pain. So we want to think about where we need to strengthen as well as stretch. Good, let's come down onto our forearms. So we're staying in that tabletop position, and we're on our forearms this time. You can either interlace the fingers or place the palms into the ground. Doesn't matter to me. And then bring a bit more weight through that right forearm. We're going to extend back the right leg. Toes can touch the ground, you can point, or you can flex the foot. And all I want you to do is lift the leg up to the point where you feel the hamstring and the buttock contract, and then lower it back down. Avoid sassying into that left hip. So we don't want to sink into the left hip joint. We want to feel that we're bringing even distribution of weight between the right forearm and the left knee. And we're just lifting and lowering that right leg. And you should straight away feel the hamstrings and the buttocks kick in to get this lifting action. No soggy bent legs, so keep the legs nice and strong and look slightly forward. I promise you your leg's still going to be there, so we don't have to look down to it, it's going to be there. And just keep that little lift, little lower, lift and lower. Try not to hammock into your belly, so we don't want to let the spine do this. It's not about height, but it's about the intention of lifting that leg. Hold it up there, flex the foot, and we pull the heel to the buttock and extend it straight away. Heel to the buttock, trying to keep the thigh elevated and extend. Good. Heel in and extend. 3 more. Heel in and extend, heel in and extend. This time we're going to do little pulses in, so keep the knee bent and just pulse in, 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 in. Little pulses waking up the hamstring. Good, pulse, 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 pulse for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Extend the leg long, little pulses up with the leg, pulse, 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 pulse. Keep that leg as straight as you possibly can and just feel that kind of agony. It should be relatively interesting in sensation. Let's go for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Push down onto both forearms, so both hands, sorry, and then step the right leg through. Low lunge. Now we're just going to practice a little bit of dynamic movement. We've just activated into the hamstrings. So we're just going to move around a little bit here to dynamically wake up the hamstrings. Don't worry too much if they feel quite tight now because you've just engaged them.
If you want to bring the arms in, you can bring the arms in so you get a bit more movement through the entire body. And just feeling that tightness that we've just explored down the back of the leg, waking up this area of your body. One more. Good. Coming back, down with the hands, slide the leg back, and then come back to little movements of the pelvis. Little mini cat-cows, just to get the awareness of now how one side feels comparatively to the other. Good. Back onto the forearms. Forearms down, palms can be together. We're going to extend the left leg back. So keeping that awareness of the weight going through the left forearm and the right thigh, rather than just leaning into the right side. And all we do is either point or flex the left foot, and we lift and lower. Lift and lower. It doesn't matter how high the leg goes. I want you to think about not letting the spine go with you. So it's about that point where you get that lift and you feel the tension, and then you release back down. Little lift and low. We'll all have different ranges of flexibility and different strengths in our body. So try not to compare yourself visually to anyone else, whether you're practicing with somebody else or with me, just noticing your own sensational response as you lift and lower. So that muscle on the back of your leg and your glute should be switched on. That's all we really want to care about. Good, feeling that coming up nice and high. Keep the leg elevated, bend the knee, flex the foot and pull the heel to the buttock and then extend away. Heel to buttock, extend away. Heel to buttock, extend away. Couple more, heel to buttock and extend. Heel to buttock and extend. One more, bending it in. Now little pulses in, in, in. Keep the thigh elevated. Remember, we're still leaning through that left forearm. Pulse, 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 pulse. For 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Extend the legs straight, little pulses up, up. Imagine if I was to place a cup of coffee on your sacrum, it would still be there, yeah? So trying not to let the hips drop, keep everything nice and neutral in your sacrum, and just pulse that leg up for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good, come up onto your hands, step the left leg through, and we'll take our dynamic hamstring stretches. So back and forward, just warming up into the hamstrings here. If you want to use the arms, and get the arms in, extending it up into the upper body. And don't worry too much about just bouncing in and out. We're just waking up our hamstrings a little bit here. They might feel a little bit tense because we've just worked them, and that's okay. Good, one more. And then the hands will come back down. We'll bring our leg back. And maybe just sink back into a child pose, or you can just close off the legs and just have that feeling maybe into the hammies to release. Sock moment. So grab your socks, or if you're just sliding on the floor. Now, folding up your mat a little bit so that you have space. If you don't want to do this, you can just turn the other way on your mat and face me, that's fine. And we're going to pop our socks on our feet. Or if you're using sliders, then sliders work great here. I like socks because you don't lose the sliders. Often my sliders go off in like all these crazy, I'm like, oh, my sliders. So hopping your bum onto the rolled up part of the mat so your feet have space to slide. And come all the way down onto your back. Hands can rest either side. Now, you might want to just clink your heels to the kind of edge of your mat to begin with. So we're just going to lift up into a bit of a bridge pose and just wake up the glute and hamstring area. And we can just lift and hold and just feel this activation. So switch on your buttocks, switch on your hamstrings, check that they're activating, and then just breathe here. Now, you can lower the bum so it's maybe an inch above the floor. It doesn't have to be too high. And place that left foot off the mat onto the floor. I said left and I did right. I'm going to do left. And all I want you to do is slide the left leg away and pull it in.
Create some resistance as we slide away and pull in by digging down into the floor. So rather than just having a little kind of slippy slide, dig down as we push away, dig down as we pull in. And you should straight away feel your hamstrings activating on your left leg, but also your supporting leg because your hip is elevated. Let's pause as we bring that foot in. Drop the left heel down, right heel off the mat. We slide away, we slide in. Slide away, create resistance, slide in. Slide away, slide in. 2 more, slide away, slide in. Last one, slide away, slide in. Drop the foot back to the mat. Now we're going to alternate. So both heels come off the mat, a little bit harder to hold here. We'll slide the right leg, pull it in. Slide the left leg, pull it in. Remember, hips are still lifted. Right, in, left, in. One more round, right, left, and in. Now holding, you can go over that exact thing, same again. Repeat was the word I was looking for. Or we're going to use both legs at the same time. So either doing right and left, or both legs together, both legs pull in. Much harder, both legs together, both legs pull in. And just go as far as your legs can go that you can then pull back in. Keeping the bum elevated, or if you have to drop the bum to the floor, you can, but I'd rather you just went to single legs and strengthen the hamstrings. Ooh, this is hard. Keep going. 3 more. Extend, drag in. 2 more. Extend, drag in. 1 more. Extend, drag in. Drop the feet. Let the legs float up to the sky and give them a shake. Oh, it's so much harder than it looks when we do it. So really feeling those legs just activating, particularly the back line you'll feel. It's fantastic for us. We focus so much in yoga about stretching that back line and not enough time about strengthening it. Good. And then just hug the knees in. We'll roll up to seated or however we want to get here. And we can take off our socks. I promise that's the only sock work you have to do today. Pop them off to the side. And then coming back into your child pose position, but rolling your mat back out long. So let your mat go all the way back out. And we'll come back into our child pose position, closing off the hamstrings here. Take a moment to breathe. And just feel the muscles that are fired up. So really welcome that warmth we've experienced now in the hamstrings. We now know where at least bicep femoris is. Good, so we're going to bring our flowing action into this next part of our practice. We're going to work through the left and the right side relatively steadily, so don't panic, we're not going to go too fast. We want to feel the hamstrings as opposed to just kind of glide through them without any experience of stretching and strengthening. So on your inhale, shift your weight into your tabletop position. Now, if you're working with sore knees, you can just stay here or flex your feet. Heels are going to shift towards the buttocks as we just lean slightly forward. So we're not dipping in the hips, we're just shifting the weight forward so it's a bit more of a wrist stretch to get off the patella, the kneecap, and pull the heels towards the buttocks strongly. Tuck the toes into the earth and we'll push back into a downward facing dog. Now we can wiggle this down dog if it feels nice to release all the way from the sit bones all the way down towards the heel, the Achilles tendon, even the calf muscles. So explore the sensation down the backs of your legs, not worrying too much about whether it needs kind of more movement or less, but just feeling into it. Now we're going to lift up the right leg into our 3-legged down dog position. Now, if this feels too intense for you today, just drop your left knee down and you can lift your right leg up and play here. Or tucking the foot back and getting a stretch into the calf muscle. But with the 3-legged down dog, what we're really experiencing is the stretch in the left leg. So it doesn't even matter if that right leg goes up a little bit. Just be aware that there's more weight into the hands, so you might want to walk the weight back a little bit to take the pressure off the shoulders. So just work with this three-legged down dog that suits your body and just play. When we move the top right leg around, what happens to the underneath leg? Let's walk our feet to the top of the mat, coming into a dangle position. Softening the knees, releasing the head, and letting the spine elongate. And just stay here for a moment. If you would like to, straighten your legs and tuck your chin in towards your chest, maybe rounding the spine. So creating that strong back line stretch for the fascia. Enjoying what it might feel like to quite deeply open the back line of the body. If you need to bend your knees because it feels quite tight, just soften your knees, it's absolutely fine. Now we're going to bend our knees deeply and come into our chair pose. So sink the weight back into the heels. And I want you to reach your arms back, just so we can start thinking about the upper body as well as the lower body. We tend to quite often in chair round the upper body. I want you to think here about pushing the tailbone back. So we're actually in an anterior tilt of the pelvis. Anterior is this way, posterior is this way. So we want to push the tailbone back so that we get a little bit more of an anterior tilt. Reach the arms back and fire up those legs. In fact, the whole lower body is probably working quite strongly here. If you feel comfortable with the position of your back, maybe reach the arms over your head. Keep the weight back into the heels and breathe. Good, one more breath. Hands are going to travel to the hips. Extend the right leg away, but keep a nice bend in the left knee. Really light on the right toe, so we're not pushing the weight into the back foot, but we're very light here. And just as we did in our forearm position, we're going to lift the leg and lower. That is it. Little lift, little lower. So nothing is changing in my spine. My leg is just lifting to the point where it can, and then it lowers back down. Lift and lower. Hamstring and buttock engagement. And you also feel that front leg activating as well. If you have a warrior 3 and you want to do this in warrior 3, you can. Much more challenging for your balance. And I want you to think more about the back leg. So if it feels really hard to balance here and activate the back leg, come back here. One more, lift and lower. Now sliding that right leg, tucking it behind the outside of the left, and we'll just keep that left knee bent, right leg straight. Let's inhale, reach the arms up to the sky, big stretch. And exhale, fold forward. So we're keeping the right leg as straight as we can. Hands might get to the thigh. We might be able to drop to the shin or even let the arms drop to the floor. And just feel that lateral stretch. So the outer edge of the right leg gets a beautiful stretch. A client of mine said, well, Kate, you always say things are yummy and beautiful and lovely, but actually they're sometimes just painful. And I was like, yeah, maybe I do like stretching. Maybe I do quite like the pain. So feel that sensation going down the outside edge of the leg, whatever it might feel like for you, as long as it's a manageable sensation and we're not kind of fearing being in this position. So if you need less depth, take less depth. One final breath here. Now I want you to bend the underneath right leg. So I know our legs are crossed, so the lefts and rights can get confusing. The leg that's underneath bends as we lift the torso up. As if we're about to sit into a chair, but we've got our left leg crossed over our right. And you can either let the left foot float off the floor, or you can keep the toes down. And really sink back and have that feeling here of activating into the underneath leg. Breathe. Lengthen through the spine. And we're just hovering here. How nice. Now, as we begin to straighten up the underneath leg, drop the left foot over towards the right edge of the mat. So all we have to do here is literally drop. And from that drop position, we're going to reach up the right arm and take a lean to the left. So we're getting into the side of the right hip, waist, Avoid leaning forward if you can, and it doesn't matter how much of a side stretch you do, but you're really rolling kind of to the blade edge of that right foot a little bit, and you're on the ball of the left foot. So you're not really going that far, but we're getting all the way down this lovely side of the body. Feels really great. One more breath. Now coming back up to the center, interlace the fingers behind your back, squeeze your shoulder blades back together, and spin to the back of your mat. Your feet will be roughly mat distance, so don't worry if they're a little bit closer or a little bit wider. And really squeeze your shoulder blades back and bring your palms to press towards one another. So we want to keep the elbows a little bit soft. Then from here, keeping that spine nice and elongated, we can fold forward. Only go where you feel you can keep those shoulder blades pressing towards each other. And if you need to bend your knees, bend your knees. Rather than just opening up and stretching to the shoulders kind of most potential, squeeze the shoulder blades. Head wants to be relaxed, and we're really pushing the palms towards each other. So we're activating our upper back nice and strongly. Good, take another breath here. As we release the arms down towards the earth, we will walk the hands into our plank pose. Now you may need to walk your feet back a little bit so that you're in a long, elongated plank variation. Great. Now we're going to lift up the right leg and lower it back down. Lift the right leg, lower it back down. One more, lift the right leg, hold it up there, hold, little pulses up, up, good, up, up, for 3, 2, 1. Now draw that right knee across to the left side and roll back to the top of your mat, sitting onto your bum. The left leg is then going to cross over the right thigh, and your right arm will wrap around your left leg, twisting to the left. That might have been a little bit of a what arm twister moment. So just coming into this twist to the left. If you need to extend your right leg out, you can, and take the twist with the right leg extended. That's absolutely fine. And feeling that the sit bones are relatively pressed into the floor, so just get this kind of pin-pull feeling. So we're getting a little bit into the glute here, into the outside of the leg. If you want to go a little bit more for your lateral hamstring, grab the outside of the left foot, and you can extend the left foot, but pulling it across towards the right side. You can also grab the leg. If you can't reach the foot, that's fine. I've got long arms, just always been quite long. So generally speaking, can grab my feet anatomically without much effort. So remember, it's not better or worse. One more breath here. Good, rebend that left foot, and we're turning it to the long edge of the mat. Right hand comes behind you, and we extend the right leg. Now we're on the blade edge of the right foot, and we might just want to lift the left arm up. That might be plenty, and you'll get that again, side stretch position. So we're rolling onto that hip, so you really feel that nice stretched position here. Or use your left foot to push into the floor to lift up. So we get a really nice strength for the obliques. We're using that left foot to push into the floor. So we're using the left leg. It's not just here as a crutch here, it's actually active, pushing down into the floor. And if you want a real extra little bit, lift the underneath leg, squeezing the inner thighs together. So we're pushing down through the left foot, right hand, and squeezing the inner thighs towards each other. Hold. Good, lower the leg down, lower the hip down. Rolling back onto both sit bones, and this left leg crosses over the right as best it can. And we might find we just want to sit upright. That might be plenty. Or we fold forward. Getting a nice strong stretch down the back of that right hamstring. I really like this pose because you can really feel the hamstrings, but ultimately that central hamstring's getting the biggest stretch here, so bicep femoris, the one right through the center. And it's really not about how deep we go in, but maybe if we round the spine more and bring the nose to the knee or towards the chest, we might feel a little bit more. than if we just try and reach all the way towards the foot. So think about the entire line of the back of the body as opposed to just focusing on your hamstrings. As I will keep telling you, we are not just made up of these muscles that get blocked together. They are all interwoven as one big muscle, really, and then just clipped and folded to make individual muscles. So really, we're never just stretching one part of the body. Good, we'll slowly curl our body up. This right leg is going to stay exactly where it is, centre of the mat. And the left leg's just going to go off to the left side wherever it can stretch to. So if it can stretch all the way over there somewhere, great. Maybe flex your feet. Oh yeah, so we're getting medial hamstrings from the knee, inside of the knee up towards the groin, but also inner thigh and hips. And you might just want to kind of move around here, get the pelvis going a little bit. If you're very stuck in this sort of position, you might want to bend your knees and try and lift up. But be kind to yourself, just have a little route around. You might want to lessen the degree of the opening so that you can maintain that pelvic movement. Or hop yourself up onto something that gives you a little extra height, but we're not here for too long. If you quite like the feeling, I love this feeling of opening up the inner thighs, then maybe starting to walk forward, but try and keep your toes for the purpose of this stretch up to the sky, just so we can keep that medial hamstring stretch going. As opposed to dropping the toes in or rolling them too far out, just see how it feels. And you may be able to come all the way down, I don't know. You might want to have a little play here, or you might just want to go to a position where you feel accessible, strong stretch, but it's not so intense that you can't breathe, yeah? Keep breathing. Good, one more breath. Now, we'll slowly bring the legs back together, back to the top of our mat. Fingers are going to come turned outwards, just maybe slightly off the mat, and we're going to bend the knees. I'm going to just use the heels here, but you can ground the soles of the feet, lift the bum up. And what we're going to do is walk one foot away and then the next foot away, keeping the bum off the floor and walking till we're in this kind of Purvottanasana pose. Then we reverse it, left foot in, right foot in, and just keep going, out, 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 in, 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 in. Good. Out, 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 in, in, in. Ground the feet, drop the bum to the floor, lengthen the legs, and fold forward. Now you can stay here. Lovely little rounded forward fold, getting both legs. Or if you fancy it, roll onto your back, swing the legs over your head, and come into your plow pose. It's the same position, just with a different gravitational force. If you're in this position, try and grab your back to support the body and keep the legs as straight as they can. They don't need to go down to the floor over the head. It depends on your flexibility of your body. And if this agitates your neck, stay in the forward fold position on the ground. If your toes do touch the floor, maybe try as best you can to flex the feet and push the heels away. Notice how that will change the stretch. Be mindful of your neck. One more breath. Now we're guiding our spine back down into the earth if we're in the plow pose, and we're going to roll all the back way up into our forward fold. So those of us that are still in the forward fold, just stay here. And then making our way back up to seated, either crossing at the ankles or bringing the legs around. We're going to come all the way up and back into our child pose position. Bum to heels, close off the hamstrings, the hips, the knees. And just take a moment to breathe here. Good, let's make our way back up onto our hands and knees as we inhale. Tabletop position, we're going to flex the feet, pull the heels towards the buttocks and slightly lean forward. So we're trying to come off the kneecaps a little bit here. We're not dipping into the pelvis. The pelvis isn't coming down. We're keeping the spine neutral. Then we're going to tuck the toes, shift back to our downward facing dog. Remember this down dog, if you want to walk your hands a bit closer to take some of the pressure off your shoulders, you can, and to feel more into the calf muscles. So work with your body and where you want to work. There is no perfect placement for our down dog. It's what we want to work with in our bodies, and what we're trying to strengthen or stretch will vary. Now the left leg's going to lift up three-legged down dog, and we're feeling the right leg here. So you can move that left leg around and explore how it changes the feeling in the right leg. Maybe you find this a little bit strong, so you might want to come down onto the knee. Maybe you want to stretch the legs back and just feel into the calf muscles here. So just choose what works for your body today. Good, then we'll walk the left foot in, right foot in, walk all the way to the top of your mat into that standing forward fold position. Maybe bending the knees a little bit first just to release the lower back. Notice that relationship between your pelvis, your hamstrings and your back. So if we're very tight in the hamstrings, it's going to tuck the tailbone under. It's going to make it very hard for the pelvis to shift, the back to elongate. So if we bend our knees more, we're going to have more capacity to find that position. Maybe you want to straighten your legs so you feel the entire backline fascia getting a stretch, which may encourage the tailbone to tuck down slightly, which is fine. But if this agitates your lower back, go back to bending your knees. Now we will deeply bend our knees into our chair pose, so bend your knees, weight into the heels. Arms going to come back, so we're sorting out the lower and upper body. What we don't want to do is end up in this kind of weird rounded position. So push the bum back. Remember that anterior tilt of the pelvis. Technically speaking, we're kind of in a neutral position, but if you think about pushing back slightly, then you will avoid rounding because it's getting that kind of biofeedback. So use your hands. Go, am I in a neutral spinal position? Yeah, my lower back is slightly curved, my weight's in my heels, my pelvis feels good. I can also lengthen up through my upper body. If you feel comfortable here, maybe reach the arms over your head. So nothing has changed in the rest of the body except the arms going over the head. Oh, feel those legs firing up, particularly those hamstrings. We're pushing into the ground. Hands are going to come to the hips, keep the right knee bent and just extend the left leg. Toes tap really, really lightly to the floor, so lightly. And then all you need to do is little lift, little lower. If you're feeling very wobbly, wonderful. I love a wobble, helps us to learn. If you need that support though, make sure you have a wall or something near you, just if you feel you're going to fall over, you've got that for support. If you want to do this from a warrior 3, you can, but just be mindful we're not doing this in the back and we're still just getting the lift from the hamstring and the buttock. I prefer to do this from here. Little lift, little lower. One more. Good, cross that left leg straight behind the right foot. Right knee is still bent. We'll inhale, reach the arms up, big stretch. And exhale, fold forward. Hands can come to the thigh, the shin, or even the floor. And we're trying as best we can to keep that left leg straight so that we're getting the lateral edge, the outer edge of that left hamstring. Oh, it feels so nice. And we'll come back to a lovely lateral hamstring stretch in a very short while. Let's just breathe nice and steady. These poses can feel quite intense, especially if these muscles don't really get stretched very often. So just be aware that if it feels quite strong on your body, breathe slowly. Now we're bending the underneath left knee and coming up with the torso. That right leg is just kind of crossed over. So imagine you're sitting in a chair, your toes can stay on the ground or let them come up. And sink back as far as you possibly can without rounding your spine. So we're still in that neutral plane with the spine. You're working your legs. So if we're on the front, we're just sitting back. Avoid too much of a sassy into that left hip. So keep that feeling of sitting back into a chair. If we sat with a sassy, we'd miss the chair, right? We want to sit straight back. Now, as we begin to straighten the left leg, we let the right foot just pop over to that left side. So our legs, the feet are a little bit more separated. We're still on the right ball of the foot. Raise the left arm up and take a side stretch over to the right. So you're pushing that left hip
all the way out towards the left side as the left arm comes over. Try to not make this a forward fold. If you're struggling to get the side stretch, come all the way up to standing and then just tilt slightly over. It doesn't have to be a big side stretch. It can be just very small, just to feel these tight areas that can take over. Especially if our glute medius is weak, TFL loves to take over. So let's just give it a bit of a stretch. So we'll come back to the center, interlace the fingers behind the back. Remember to squeeze the shoulder blades back, palms pressed together, and spin to the back of the mat, feet grounded. We're then going to very slowly push the shoulder blades together. We're pushing everything back in the upper back, and we fold forward. So try to avoid rounding your upper spine here. If your hands just come up and you separate and you feel all wonky here, take less. Try and squeeze the palms towards each other. You can bend your knees, let your head be free, or straighten your legs. Just feel your body, a little tiny micro bend in your elbows. It's really hard for me because my arms are a little bit hyperextendable. So especially if you find that you're very hypermobile in your elbows, you will want to have that little bend in that joint. Good, release the hands down to the floor and walk forward into your plank pose. Your feet may need to walk back a little bit so you're in that nice plane. Remember thinking here, sacrum, scapula, skull. So lower back, shoulder blades, back of the head. Left leg lifts up, just the left leg, and we lower it. Left leg lifts and lower. One more, left leg lifts, just pulse it up and up and up and up. Hold, and then cross that left knee towards the right side. We then drop onto the left hip, so we turn towards the top of your mat. Right foot crosses to the outside of the left leg, left arm wraps around the right leg, and we twist to the right. If that felt like twister, just come to the top of your mat and bring that right leg over your left and twist to your right side. You may want to extend the left leg underneath if you find it's all a bit too compacted in your body. Or if you're feeling like you want a little extra stretch down the lateral hamstring, grab the outside of the right foot and just pull it off to the left side. Don't pull it off, don't pull your leg off. Just pull the leg over. Good, and let your head even twist all the way around as far as it wants to go over that right shoulder. Good, one more breath. Now we rebend the right knee if it's extended, drop the right foot to face the long edge of the mat, left hand goes behind you. Extending that left leg, and we can maybe just sit here and reach the right arm up. This might feel nice. Getting that whole side stretch all the way down the outer edge of the legs, a little bit into the IT band, the TFL, the hips, the waist. Or you can lift up. So we're pushing down through that right foot. We're using this right foot here actively. If you want even more, we lift up the underneath left leg and squeeze the inner thighs together. Squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. One more breath, inhale. Drop the underneath leg, drop the hip, roll back onto both sit bones. This right leg is crossed over the left and we fold forward. Now remember, you might find that you can't go very far. You might find that actually sitting upright is quite a lot. If this leg doesn't fully cross over, it's okay. It can be more spacious. So it's still just finding that place where the body feels the most accessible into these positions. There's nothing wrong with pretzeling our bodies, right? It's kind of fun. But if the body doesn't want to go there and it's just painful and really unnecessarily uncomfortable, it's not where we need to go. So just feel the stretch. We want to feel the back line of the body, particularly the left hamstring. So for me, my left leg is a lot more flexible than my right, always been that way. So I need to go quite deep to feel quite a strong stretch. So actually, instead of going deep, I tend to roll in. And then I get that feeling down the back of my spine, which is probably where it's most tense. Get a little bit down the back of the leg, but my hamstring's pretty open. How much more does it need to stretch? I'm not really that sure. Probably not that much. But if you're the opposite for me, or you feel a lot of sensation down the back of the leg, ease yourself in slowly. It's not a competition for the most flexible. I find a lot in yoga now that it seems to be like, who can be the bendiest? who cares? As the older I get, I'm like, I just want to be able to run, walk, cycle, do my yoga practice for feeling kind of free and liberated rather than have to get into these funky shapes. Not saying that the funky shapes are wrong, but my body doesn't really like a lot of them. Good, so we'll curl up nice and slow, just for the sake of you being able to still see. I'm going to spin round, you don't have to do that. Now we're going to leave the left leg where it is and bring the right leg out nice and wide. So we're in wherever we want to be in this shape. I love the feeling of this inner thigh pull, the hips feels great. And you might just want to move around a little bit and just explore all those different kind of stretches that happen around this kind of groin and then leg, upper leg area. If you want to bend your knees a little bit and play with the pelvic movement. It feels quite nice. Or just go in for it, go for a little bit of a dive into the stretch and see what comes up. Try and keep your toes to face the top of the mat. Try, just so that we get that stretch in the right sort of area as opposed to differing. So when we move our legs around, we'll get a different stretch into different parts of the hamstrings. Remember, we've got 3 of them, 3 lovely hamstrings in each leg. Good, let's take another breath wherever we are. I think I was tortured when I was really young in dance class in this pose, but rather than creating trauma for me, I actually love it. It's like, we had to like be in these positions for a really long time sometimes. And yeah, and I actually really like it now. So we'll walk back up. If you've ever done dance, you might know what I mean. Bring the legs back together, top of the mat, and we'll bring the hands to face outwards. I like to just keep the heels into the floor, but you can ground the whole feet. Lift the bum up. And we just walk out, walk, kitty, walk, walk, out, 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 and then in, 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 in. Keep going, out, 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 in, 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 in. 2 more, out, 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 in, 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 in. Last one, out, 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 and then actually this time let's just lower the bum down. Oh, and fold forward. Again, if you want to stay in this forward fold here, stay here. You can flex or point your feet, or we can roll into our Navasana plow pose. That's the one I was going for. Half switched on today. Now remember, in plow pose, grab your back, support your body, maybe flexing the feet, bringing the toes to the front. Try not to move your head around. Just let the neck be in a comfortable plane. This is a deep flexion for your entire spine, so be very mindful of that. If it doesn't feel good somewhere else along the line, even if it feels good in the hamstrings, come out slowly or lessen the degree that we're in. Good, if we are in plow, let's just ease our bodies out and come back to that seated forward fold position. And we'll curl all the way up. Shake off the legs, and we'll make our way onto our hands and knees. This is where I want you to grab your blocks, if you have them. If you don't have blocks, it's absolutely fine. We're going to do 3 stretches, getting all 3 hamstrings on both sides of our body. So coming into tabletop position, you can use your blocks here. I'm going to go medium height. You can go highest height or lowest height. And step the right foot through, coming into that half Hanuman stretch. If you want to bring your blocks a little bit closer and find an elongation through your spine, please do. What we want to encourage is digging that right heel down and pulling the right sit bone back. So we're trying to lengthen through the spine here as much as we can to get a lovely stretch on the back of the leg. If this feels really intense, bend the knee and then pull the sit bone back. By bending that knee just a little bit, we're still getting the stretch in the right sort of area, as opposed to rounding. And you can see on my body, as soon as I round, I might be able to get my legs straight, but I'm not actually stretching my hamstring as much as if I bend my knee and pull the sit bone back, I'm getting a hamstring stretch. So remember that bending the knee is not a modification. It's a variation to feel into your body, because you can still stretch your leg, but you lose the sensation. So it's about what we're feeling and what we might need to make a variety of movements to feel into that stretch. Good, let's take one more breath here. Now I'm going to show you this from the front so you can see. I'm just going to swap legs so you don't get confused with the leg. So I'm mirroring you. Now we're going to let this right leg shuffle over to the right side at a diagonal position. So it's not all the way over here, it's at a diagonal. And I've just moved my right hand over my leg. Then we can flex the foot and just gently pull that sit bone back. We're not going down, we're just pulling back. And if you want to come a little bit lower onto your hands, you can, or even into that tabletop position. You'll get more sensation the lower you go down into that tabletop pose. What loves to happen in this position is the hip likes to lift up. Because our bodies are intelligent, our brains are clever, like, ah, this hurts. So it hoists the hip up so we can't feel so much. Try and think of keeping this sit bone level, so the pelvis wants to be as level as possible. Yeah, this one's quite strong. Oh, there goes my microphone, flying out of my ear. And just keep breathing. I love this stretch. Now, the toes want to stay pointed up as opposed to turned in or out. Keep the toes up so we feel the right. You should feel it like all the way to that knee and along into the groin. One more breath, I promise. Now, coming back up onto the hands, maybe a little bit higher just to ease out. And we'll heel toe that foot back into the center. This time, let's heel toe over towards the left side. Now, toes point up again. As you can see, the hip might want to swivel towards the left to accommodate the fact that this is going to hurt. Try and avoid that as well. So pull that hip back in line with the other hip, and then we're going to get that lateral hamstring. This is when people go, seriously, Kate? This is horrendous. I love this stretch. I'm so weird, aren't I? I do love it. It feels great. Because it's so tight, I'm like, oh yeah. Again, you can walk slightly forward. You can come even further down to intensify this. But be very mindful that we don't want to swivel round. You want to feel something. And if it's too intense, just draw it slightly back closer towards the center. One more breath. Should be called Kate's torture hamstring stretching exercise. Good, now to come out of this position, slide the leg back. You might just want to come back into a tabletop, give the hips a bit of a wiggle, or any other movement that feels nice to release, maybe stretching a leg back or two. And we're going to go for the other side. Right leg comes forward, left leg, sorry, comes forward. And we dig that left heel down, pull the sit bones back. Remember, bent knee if we need it. Why not? If it feels more interesting, in fact, you know what? Today I feel much better with a bent knee. And if you have anything dodgy going on the back of your knee today, something feeling uncomfortable for you, bend your knee. It's absolutely fine. But what we don't want to end up is just rounding all the time. It's just because we lose the stretch. It's not wrong, it's just a different stretch. Good, taking a couple of breaths here. In an ideal world, 90 seconds each stretch, perfect. If you don't have that much time, at least 30 seconds. Let's take another breath. Now I'm going to show you again from the front. So with that left leg, heel toe it over towards the left side, bring that left block over. So it's at a diagonal. And then we flex the foot so it's pointing up to the sky, and we pull the sit bone slightly back. Remember, we're not sinking the bum back, we're just pulling the sit bone back. And if you want more of a stretch, come down onto the forearms, maybe even lower blocks. You can go onto your forearms if you like. And just have that feeling here. This hip wants to sink downwards. So that hoisting up is a way for us very intelligent beings to prevent the discomfort. Sink it down. You might still need to bend your knee here. Bending knees is fine, but get the intention behind this. We're pulling that sit bone back, feeling that. You should feel it quite a lot. I mean, I'm very open in my hamstrings, and I can feel this quite a lot from that sit bone all the way down towards the knee. Medial hamstring here is going for it. And my left leg, which is, technically this is my right leg now, this is my tighter side, my right. So I'm doing my right side as I'm mirroring you. So this is the side that needs it more for me. Good, let's take another breath here. Now we will maybe come back up slowly. So if you've come down, make your way up, heel toe, that right foot, left foot back in, and go over to the right side. Doesn't have to be far. And then keep pulling back those hips, so toes lift up. and we'll pull back. So again, we don't want to skew-iff the hips over towards the side. It's going to make us lose the stretch. We're just gently easing back. Take a few moments to breathe here. Oh, this side is so tight for me. I still love it, but my leg is now starting to shake. It's like, Kate, yeah, you keep telling the students that you love it. You just keep telling them that. I do, I promise. Okay, let's take another breath here. Remember, when I say a breath, kind of mean 12 seconds-ish. And then we'll heel toe that foot back to the center, bring it back down, maybe sitting back onto the heels. Remove your blocks, and we'll just make our way onto our backs with our strap-like object. So if it's not a yoga strap, it's fine. Dressing gown, tie, scarf, anything that you have. And I want you just to hook the right ball of the foot and elevate the right leg up to the sky. Now, I just quite like grabbing hold of the strap and letting my arms drop into the floor. Passive stretch. This is not about trying to get the leg over the head. Just for that last little bit, we're softening into the leg, softening into the arms, and you'll feel a passive stretch going all the way down the back of the leg. If you want to move it around a little bit, like taking little circles, you can. It was quite nice. Or just let it kind of float up here, like a blade of grass just hovering up in the wind. Now, if you don't have a hook on one end, you can just bring the strap over the foot and grab opposite ends of your tie and just let the arms drop down. This is just as nice. I sometimes wrap the strap once around my hands just so that it feels easier than having to kind of pull and hold and grip. The reason I like a hooked strap is because of the length of the strap. It makes it a little bit less intense for me, which I like. Good, one more breath. Now re-bend that knee, let the leg just drop to the floor and just let it go heavy for a moment. How lovely. We're nearly there. Let's bring the left foot, hook the left ball of the foot with the strap, and just let the leg go up to the sky and let the arms, so we're gripping hold of the strap somewhere kind of in the middle rather than up to the sky. This is a bit too much effort for the arms. Somewhere kind of middle so the elbows can maybe almost come to the floor. And we're not worrying about, are we getting the leg over the head? Is the knee perfectly straight? We're just feeling this leg float above us. And if it wants to take those little circles, let it take those little circles. Let it meander around if it wants to. Just let it feel free to explore sensation. Take a final breath here. We'll rebend the knee, unhook the strap, and let the leg flop down to the floor. Time to relax. So maybe close the eyes and just let all the tingles in your legs be felt. I will let you know when it's time to come out of this pose. So soften your entire body, particularly your legs. Let them recover from all that movement, stretching, strengthening. Let them fizz as we dissolve into the earth. Take the last few moments to feel your body rested into the earth. Those moments before we begin to come back to movement. We might start to wiggle fingers, toes. Maybe take movements that help you break out of this stillness of Shavasana. You might stretch your arms over your head, maybe point your toes away. There may need to be a big yawn, perhaps a sigh. We can hug the knees in towards the chest and rock a little bit from side to side. Rolling all the way over to the left or the right side, and pause here for a moment in a fetal position. Then gently and gradually lift your body up to seated, finding a comfortable seat to close off your practice with me today. As you inhale, sweep the arms up high to the sky. Palms connect. And exhale, draw the hands down to the center of the heart. Gently bow your head forward, thanking yourself for your practice today, for feeling into our hamstrings, stability and mobility. Namaste. Thank you so much for joining me, and well done. See you again soon.